Okay, folks, here we go. This is the Scottish UK House Price Index. So it's the House Price Index for Scotland. This is the key data that you really want to know. This is all the housing transactions in Scotland brought together. So it will include things like from the nationwide, it will include the Halifax ones, and it will include Zoopla sales and Rightmove sales as well. But this is actually the facts. This is the key indicator we'll have to focus on. So let me just share the screen and talk about the headlines. So the headlines here, exactly where it stands. Average house prices in Scotland rose by 0.1%. You know, we're getting told time and time again that house prices are dropping, but average house price in Scotland to July 2023 rose 0.1%. Yeah, fair enough. They might edge down slightly towards then, but 1% basically means we're back at the same prices as we were 12 months ago. So July 2022, when you bought, potentially if you went to sell just now in a year's time, which is very unrealistic for a lot of people because the entry and exit costs are huge in comparison to that, then you would be sitting at sort of the same price for your house right now after a year. Nothing wrong with that. That's perfectly normal in this type of market. So the economic statement is average house prices in Scotland increased by 0.1% to the 12 months of July 2023. This was down from 0.3% in the 12 months to June 2023, and it was slower than the average UK house price inflation, which is actually 0.6% in the 12 months to July 2023. On a seasonally adjusted basis, house prices. Scottish house prices. The average house price in Scotland increased by 1.1% on a seasonally adjusted basis between June 2023 and July 2023, compared with an increase of 1.2% during the same period 12 months ago. On a seasonally adjusted basis, average house prices in Scotland increased by 0.3% between June 2023 and July 2023. So UK house prices, Scottish house prices are all sitting round about just now. Average UK house price for Scotland, so the Scottish house price average, is £191,870. If we divide that by probably the average salary, according to the Office of National Statistics in Scotland, is about 33,000. So if you divide by 191,870 divided by 33,000, that comes to 5.8. 5.8 times multiplier. 6 or over is beginning to get into a heated market in terms of out of reach in terms of price point. So that means in Scotland, 50% of the properties are below that price, 50% are above that price. So still very, very affordable in terms of where we are right now in Scotland. That's what it tells us. Okay, so comparing the provisional UK house price index for the estimate for May 2022 with the provisional UK house price index for May 2023, the volume of transactions decreased by 9.5%. So that's about 10% in Scotland and 17.7% in the UK. Now, I always talk about this as the health of the property market is not necessarily house prices, which is what everybody talks about. Because the reason it's not house prices is because if you go to sell your house and it's the only house you have, if you're moving in the same area, it's more than likely if you've increased by 10%, the house you're going to buy is increased by 10%. If the house prices have gone down by 10%, the house price that you're going to buy is going down by 10% as well. So it's comparing apples with apples. So there's no disparity and there's no change there. Whereas the volume of transactions in the property market from month to month, from year on year, for the number of properties actually sold, is a good barometer of the health of the property market overall. Now, what I mean by that? Well, for example, transactional numbers have dropped by 17.7% in the UK on total, and only by 10%, well, 9.5 in Scotland. It means there's less properties actually. There's 10% less properties being sold than the year before. A classic example of that is if there's 10,000 properties sold in 1 year, well, we'll get to this actually because we've got a good chart for that. 10,000 properties sold in 1 year and it was 10% the next year less, therefore it would be 9,000 properties that would actually sold the next year. That means there's 1,000 properties not getting sold in that year, therefore the people that get involved in these extra 1,000 properties not getting sold are like contractors, solicitors, mortgage brokers, all these different professions that actually get involved in this. Estate agents as well, letting agents as well for some people that are actually buying for buy to let. if all these people are losing out on an extra 1,000 year on year, and they had the capacity to do these the year before, therefore their resources actually, they've got a lot more available. Therefore, they have to think about, is it really a cost-effective way of using their resources to continue to have the same amount as we had last year, but we're doing 10% less business? That means potentially that they would end up shedding jobs or, downsizing. So, and transactional numbers in terms of average household spend, just say, for example, 15,000 on refurbs and improvements in kitchens and bathrooms when they first buy their house. You're missing out on an extra then. You're missing out on an extra £15 million if 1,000 have actually gone down in the transactional numbers year on year in terms of these numbers. But it's going to be bigger because the number of transactions in Scotland is actually huge, and we'll discuss them as I go on, and I'll explain a bit more. Now, the great thing about it is today, base rates, Bank of England has announced they're putting them on hold. So we're still at 5.25 for the whole month coming. So this is the 14 months or 15 months that they've been progressively putting them up. They've now actually stopped that. Have the base rates rises, have they peaked? Well, it remains to be seen. The thing that's going to drive that forward ultimately is going to be the oil prices. Now, the oil prices as well just now are actually getting pushed up. The Saudis and the Russians have actually got together and they've formed a wee cartel. In other words, let's just price fix. We'll slow down the amount of oil that we're producing and putting into the system, and therefore that'll push the price of the barrel of oil up, and therefore that'll make things a lot more expensive. For example, fuel will go up, and they commented about that today when UK inflation figures were out today or yesterday at 6.7%. They commented that even though fuel has continued to go up per litre at £1.50 over £1.50 at this point in time, it doesn't seem to have affected that, and still inflation's come down from 6.8 to 6.7. So they didn't expect that at all. Hence the reason why the Bank of England, I think, actually put a hold on this and thought, wait a minute, maybe we should give this a couple of months to move through the system, all these interest rate rises that we've done, so we make sure that we don't actually stall the economy. In other words, grind it to a halt with all our interest rate rises, but we'll let the economy just settle out and actually just calmly come out of these base rate rises and adjust to that price point itself. This is great for the housing market, by the way, because this keeps a really good stabilisation on it. Okay, in Scotland, economic statement, according to the Land Registry in Scotland, detached houses show the highest annual percentage change of all property types, increasing by 2.5% in the 12 months to July 2023 to £345,000. Flats and maisonettes show the lowest annual price change in percentage. They've actually decreased by 1.5% in the months to 12 months to July 2023 to an average price of £131,000. That's an average price for a flat or a maisonette. Maisonette's a flat, but it's on two levels. So it's a top floor flat, but it's got another level to it. So it's got a stairway inside. That's what they classify as a maisonette above another flat, which is a ground floor flat. That's what they call it. The annual percentage change in the highest annual percentage change actually is East Lothian, where the average house prices have actually increased by 11.7%. See, house prices are still going up in some areas. In the 12 months to July 2023 to 330,000. The lowest annual price change was West Dunbartonshire, with average house prices decreased by 7% in the 12 months to July 2023 to 133,000. So very affordable to live in West Dunbartonshire. I don't know if anybody want to live in West Dunbartonshire. I don't know much about it, but it's very affordable to live there. And if you can work remotely, and you can choose where you want to work in the world, and you're looking for a perfect place to work, and it's really, really affordable, and potentially you could get a better bang for your buck when you buy a house than actually buying in the city, then these are the areas actually to seriously consider, because there's bound to be some beautiful countryside properties there that nobody really knows about, and the average price is probably a lot better in terms of these price points, in terms of if you look at East Lothian and West Lothian instead. Now, they go on to say the UK Scottish House Price Index, as with other indicators of the housing market, typically fluctuate from month to month. It's important not to put too much weight on 1 month set of data. However, we've been looking at this every single month, and let's bring up some charts and just quickly, briefly go through them. If you've got any questions, please feel free to ask. More than happy to answer your questions about housing market. So here it is, 191,870 is the average. We'll come to Fife's average price point in a minute. 0.1% is annual price change. The monthly price change year on year is, well, monthly price change, monthly, not year on year, is 1.1%. Okay, so let's pop into here. Annual price change. You can see there in graphical form from July 2019 in there. So you can see that there, an average price change over the last 5 years. So you can see it was 2% and then it dropped down to zero in July 2020. And then after the COVID boom, all the rest of it went boom and all the prices went up and it dropped there because of the list trust budget in there. That's what happened here. And then it boomed back up again once we got things back on track because it's all about consumer sentiment as well, how people think their things are going. If everybody believes right now that base rates have actually petered out and they're not going to get any further, inflation's going to get under control and salaries are going to rise a bit more, there's a lot of level of confidence in there for people to buy in the property market. Therefore, the property market will continue to be really, really stable and possibly having a mini boom. Now, we did a show yesterday, Perry and I, about this, and we talked about this in a bit of detail. So if you get a chance, go back and watch that show. But we did talk about the latter half of 2023 and where we see property prices in the property market overall. But in a summary, if you're not able to read that article or listen to the podcast or watch that show, in a summary, we think the stabilisation in the market is very, very good just now, and the chances of anything happening, any disruption of that, is very, very minimal. Okay, so let's pop back to our graph. See, there's the 5 years, and as we come down in here, in terms of here, we're down at the 0.1%, almost zero again. And that's okay, that's fine, because your house is to live in, it's not to make money out of, and you're only trading like for like if you're trading up or down. Fair enough, you'll make a bit more money if you're trading down, because the percentage increase is probably worth more than the percentage increase you're going to pay on downsizing to a lower value. If you're trading up, you're obviously going to pay just a slightly bit more because your percentage increase, if you've increased in value compared to someone else's increase, it means at a higher price point means that you're going to pay a bit more than what you've actually got and made on your own. Hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, please feel free to contact us and actually walk it through and talk it through with you. The important thing about here is you get the facts and not just an opinion or not just a news headline which says, base rates at their highest level forever in the last 3 days. Like, well, that means nothing. And they've done that before. They've done that before in terms of the news and sound bites and everything like that. So don't be too concerned about that. The key here is to get an estate agent out or somebody that knows about economic forecasting and everything like that, and the financial figures and the property market itself, and actually sit down with that person and go over all your options about, you're looking to sell, what will the implications be for you, and how will this affect you if interest rates rise, if interest rates drop, if mortgage rates change, or if house prices change, or the local economy changes as well, and how will that have a bearing on you? And that will then give you the facts in order to make a decision about whether you should be waiting, or whether you should be selling now, or whether you should be buying now, or whether you should be renting now, or whether you should just be exiting completely and just getting out of the market. If you're an investor, for example, based on the legislation. That's something we know about as well. Rental legislation, where everything's going, where everything's predicted in the rental market. We're very, very up to date with that. Well, I'm a private landlord and I have been for 30 years. Okay, let's jump back to the inflation figures. So we've looked at the annual price changes. This is actually quite interesting. This is the average house price in Fife. Now, drum roll. Average house price in Fife has actually gone up year on year, £175,568. It's gone up 3.8% year on year from 169,082. So this rhetoric is getting peddled out there by the media about house prices dropping. I don't think so, not in the Fife area yet. So house prices aren't dropping that anytime soon. We do notice a wee correction because remember, this is a wee bit outdated information from the Land Registry. It takes about maybe 6 or 7 months to get this on here. So we do know boots on the ground right now. More than likely, most properties are going for round about the home report value, which kind of goes in line with the increase being about 0.1%. in terms of house prices and the stabilisation overall. So I do think that's probably going to stay the same more or less all the time, and especially in the Fife area. So that's good news for people in Fife because it gives you great certainty and stability in the marketplace in order to know where you stand. Just a quick look round Aberdeen city centre, no surprise, 6.2% decrease year on year. It's now more affordable to buy in Aberdeen city centre at 138,000 than it is actually to buy in Fife at 175,000 on average. Work that one out. City of Dundee is actually really affordable as well in terms of that. So if you're looking for investment strategies and areas to target, then possibly these are the areas actually you might have a huge benefit from. Right, okay, so let's talk about where the hotspots are. You can see here on this graph, red is expensive, according to this, and blue is lower end, so hot and cold. There's a surprise, eh? Put a blindfold on. Hot, 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 cold, cold, cold. You're near it. You're near it. You're near it. And that's the kind of thing that they're looking at here. So the deeper the red, the more expensive the area is. You can see there as well. 230,000 and greater is in the Perthshire area. It's in the East Lothian, West Lothian area, and Edinburgh area, and then heated in the Highland and Islands and the Grampian regions as well. And then when you come down into the Dundee area, it becomes more affordable, 170 to 190,000. And also then back into the Angus area as well, and then into Fife overall. So very, very affordable overall. And then as you come into the Western Bartonshire around about here, in the Glasgow area, then and Dumfries and Galloway, then again, very, very affordable. So that's giving you a good insight. Average property price by detached, semi-detached, terraced, maisonette. You can see that 2.5% increase year on year for July to July for detached to 345,000. Semi-detached are 205,000, 0.7% increase year on year. Terraced 162,000. That's a minus 0.5%, so only 0.5% less. Flats and maisonettes 1.5% minus to 130,000. All in all, 191 versus 191. So no change year on year overall for the private property market, or for the Scottish property market. Sorry. Now, this is the transactional levels. This is the most important thing we've got to look at. Look at this. 58573. Now, this is the transactions back in May 2022, because that's how they track the transactions, a couple of months out of date in terms of the back. So 8573 was the year before in May 2022 versus 7538. Now, that's about 1,000 difference in terms of that. So we take the 1,000 and we divide it by the 8573 equals about 11% decrease in property transactions. As I said before, it's kind of, if it's month on month, then 1,000, if that compounds up when you think about it every single month, then as I said, if you're saying 15,000 on each property, then all these local businesses are losing out on 15 million every month. So 15 million multiply by 12, it comes to around about 180 million in potential income to shops, contractors, local businesses overall, to do improvements like carpet fitters and plumbers and electricians and kitchen fitters, all these different businesses, B&Q, Wren Kitchens, all these contractors as well, and all these manufacturers are losing out on that potential income because the number of transactions in the housing market has actually dropped month on month. This is why I say it's really important to a local economy to have that good injection of capital from local households in order to keep all these businesses going, or therefore these businesses no longer need a certain amount of their workforce, and then that's when they start to laying people off. So we do want a transactional level where the market is extremely healthy, and actually year on year it stays the same in terms of transaction numbers. But this is actually quite a key figure here when we look across. Fife, for example, let's focus on Fife. So Fife, 581 the year before on the same month, but 554. That is not a big drop at all. That is actually a really good transactional number. So that's quite healthy. When you look at the Highlands, though, you've got 353 versus 291. If you look in, for example, Glasgow, let's look at the city of Glasgow, 935 versus 798, so it's about 800. Yeah, that's a wee bit of drop. And the same with Edinburgh as well, 800 versus 943. So all these different areas, numbers have actually dropped, but on average, right across the board, about 11%. Let's just jump on and see it in a sales volume over the last 5 years. Now, this is interesting. Last 5 years, for example, 9695 in 2018, 2019, sorry, 2020, 3336, that was COVID. May 2021, 8752, that was the boom. 8573 was May 2022, and now it's dropped quite highly by the thousand, as I said, to 7538. But instantly, if you take the average of these five, because this is what happens, and actually average it out, it comes to 7573. So 7573, it's 7538 now. So this is almost smack bang on the sales volume for the 5-year average, which is actually extremely encouraging for the property market overall in Scotland. Okay, let's pop on to the property status. This is actually quite good. This is a good number. New build. Average price paid in May 2023 for new builds is about 302,000 or 301,000. The average price for a resold, which is a property that's been built already and you just buy it because it's not a new build, is 183,351. Now, why is that? Because new build is far more expensive to build and construct now because the building standards and regulations are a lot higher. There's a lot of emphasis on insulation. There's a lot of emphasis on energy efficiency. There's a lot of emphasis on solar panels, ground source heat pumps. That all costs a huge amount of money for the resources. Hence the reason why there's a differential of round about 118,000 between these two numbers, the new build and the existing resold. It kind of just tells you if you're buying a property, I know I shouldn't say this because obviously you're wanting energy efficiency. You've got to really trade it off with, do you pay more money to get that better energy efficiency and these lower running bills from month to month, depending on how long you're staying in it, or do you actually just buy a resold property, which is actually going to be far less expensive than what a new build is? And that's a trade-off. If you're only living in it for, this is a classic example about what I was hit with one day when somebody said to me about, buy a diesel car, because a diesel car can get you 100 miles, or 80 miles to the gallon, whereas a normal petrol car can only get you 40. And then I worked out for the whole year how much extra I'm going to have to use or pay out for using petrol as opposed to diesel when I was doing the average mileage I was doing. And it worked out like something extra £700. But the price of the diesel car to buy at that time from buying a petrol car brand new was something like about £4,000 more. So I'm thinking, okay, if I'm going to save £700 a year in petrol, it's going to take me almost 6 years to get that money back, the extra 4,000 I paid for the diesel. That makes no sense to me at all, because I'm probably not going to keep that car for about 6 years. So it made no sense. So it's the same with when you buy a new build house as opposed to a resale house. You've got to think to yourself, how long are you going to stay in that? And are you going to be is it going to be that energy efficient? Are you going to recover that money that you've outlaid and the extra finance you're going to have to pay for the new build property over a resale property? In other words, one that's been built already and it's been here for a number of years. That's the sort of things to think about. And that's why you speak to an estate agent to get that good insight into that when you're sitting down with them, when they're at their market appraisal, looking over your property and actually discussing what your plans are and what you're trying to achieve. The purpose of a really good estate agent is to get you from where you are now to where you want to be in the most efficient and economical manner possible by maximizing at the end result as well for you, because that allows you to have more choices in terms of what you can afford, what you can refurbish if you want to refurbish and do any extras. That means getting more money over the home report value or getting a maximum figure that someone else can get. Yes, surveyors can actually differ in their opinions on home report values depending on how well the estate agents can influence them. That's all it comes down to. And that's all down to the right comparables and demonstrating that to the surveyor. Because the surveyor, it comes from Edinburgh sometimes to survey properties, has no idea about the local market. So they just rely on local agents to tell them what the local market's like in order to form their opinion and show them the comparables. In other words, comparable properties are actually sold to formulate an opinion on what the valuation of the property is. They could do the run-of-the-mill stuff, the actual the home report itself. But when it comes to the valuation, that's where they need the local knowledge of estate agents in order to do that. And they have access to a lot of data and information that we have access to as well, and hence the reason why we come up with the same figures as they do. So the last one for me is buyer status. So the buyer status here as well is first-time buyers tend to be spending on average around about 153,000. A former owner-occupier, in other words, somebody upgrading or downgrading, is spending 232,000, probably because they've got more equity in their property. They're able to trade up as a result and actually secure that property. How are they actually funding this? This is a good one. Funding status. Uh, People that are paying cash are paying about 175,000 for their property. People that are paying cash. People that are paying by a mortgage are paying round about the 200,000 price point for people that have a mortgage. So it gives you an idea about how that extra leverage of round about 12.5% is attained from a cash buyer to a mortgage, a person buying by a mortgage, because the bank allows them to finance some of the purchase. Therefore, they can afford a bit more because they have the cash to put towards that over and above with the mortgage. And that's it, guys. Hopefully, that's given you a real good insight into the data overall in here. And if you've got any further questions about the Scottish House Price Index and the market itself and house prices and your local market, maybe in Glasgow or in Aberdeen or anywhere else, please feel free to ask. I know we're Fife Properties, however, we do have a good knowledge and expertise on most areas because we have a number of investors in these areas. Plus, we actually plug ourselves into the investor workshops, and these platforms show us that indication as well. We like to monitor the whole market, and this is why I do this every single month in order to get an assessment, not just be blinkered in the fact that, look, this is Fife, and we're only going to go in Fife. I want to see the bigger picture overall throughout Scotland and also throughout England. England isn't that important to us now, but Scottish house prices, because they're own unique. We have our own Scottish housing system as well. We look after devolved responsibility for Scottish housing in this country, in Scotland itself, and also tenancy laws as well, and most laws to do with Scotland. And that's it. Thanks very much for tuning in. Any questions, please feel free to ask them later on. And until next time, guys, I'm Jim Parker for Fife Properties TV.